There's something about summer that makes me want a lovely, delicious picnic. And if we're going to have a picnic, why not invite one of the literary greats, L.M. Montgomery, to guide us on how we pack the basket? Today, we're doing something a little different. I'm pulling a food description straight out of A Tangled Web, one of Montgomery's lesser-known adult novels, and I'm recreating it, packing it all up and heading out to a wildflower field and settling in for a proper literary afternoon. A Tangled Web came out in 1931, later in Montgomery's career, and it's a bit of a hidden gem. It's not Anne, it's not Emily. It's a standalone story about two feuding families and an heirloom jug that needs an heir. The book takes place over about 1 year, and it's full of Montgomery's sharpest observations about family loyalty and the ways people hurt each other and love each other, all while withholding the most important things that we should be saying out loud. There's a scene early on in A Tangled Web where a character briefly mentions a family meal, and Montgomery describes it in that cozy, specific way she does so well. She had held occasional gatherings that she called levees. It was her habit to announce in the local papers that she would entertain her friends on such and such an afternoon. They spent 2 hours of clan gossip and had a cup of tea, sandwiches, and several slices of cake. So I've done my best to recreate this, but with a local summer flair. The sandwiches are made with fresh chives and cucumber. The cake is a blueberry coffee cake complete with freshly picked blueberries. And the tea? Well, I substituted it with my favorite blueberry lemonade. And most importantly, I'm using my vintage bag to pack my little paperback copy. I found this bag earlier this year in my favorite thrift store and have been hankering for a reason to use it since. So here's the plan. After showing you what I've packed for the picnic, then we'll head out to the field, settle in, and I'll read a few of my favorite passages from A Tangled Web aloud to you. And after that, once we've finished the delicious meal and the book is closed, I'll give you my full, honest critique and review. What worked, what didn't, where it sits in the Montgomery canon, and whether it's worth your time if you're only familiar with her more famous works. Think of it as a book club, but in fresh air with yummy cake and maybe a few bees for company. So grab your drink, find a comfy spot, and join me on a picnic with L.M. Montgomery. In order to really make a special reading experience, I actually left a little bit of the book to finish while on my picnic. While I was enjoying seeing how L.M. Montgomery connected everything after spending the major part of the book unraveling relationships, I also got to enjoy my sandwiches. I also enjoyed the blueberry cake with the blueberries and, of course, the lemonade. The picnic experience, coupled with finishing the book, settles this book in my heart as being special, not only because it's an L.M. Montgomery story, but also because of the experience that I wrapped it in. A Tangled Web by L.M. Montgomery is definitely an adult novel, so that was nice because I've read a lot of her Anne of Green Gables and Emily of New Moon and Jane of Lantern Hill and Pat of Silver Bush and Marigold, but I've only read The Blue Castle as far as what I think would be considered her adult novels. There are some beautiful turns of phrases that I want to share with you. So the first section is about someone's love for a house that they've found. She had always loved that little house. It was she who gave it the dear secret name of Whispering Winds and dreamed all kinds of foolish, sweet dreams about it. She turned down the road and very soon was at the lane of her house, an old, old lane, grassy and deep-rutted, with bleached old gray, longer fences hemming it in. There were clumps of birches all along it for a little way, then young spruces growing up thickly on either side. Then just between them, at the end, the little house, once white, now as gray as the longers. There it was, basking in the late sun, smiling at her with its twinkling windows. Back of it was a steep hill where tossing young maples were whitening in the wind, and off to the right was a glimpse of Purple Valley. There was an old well in one corner, with an apple tree spilling blossoms over it. A little field off to the right was cool and inviting in the shadow of a spruce wood. The scent of its clover drifted along across to Whispering Winds. The air was like a thin golden wine, and the quiet was a benediction. This Tangled Web story that we read, while on the surface it really does seem about family heirlooms and family dysfunction and people holding grudges and living a life that maybe you have regrets for, at the heart of this is love. It is not just one love story, it's many love stories. And I just wanted to read a little section that L.M. Montgomery wrote about love. She sighed with rapture. She must keep this moment forever. Adventure, mystery, love, the three most significant words in any language, were to be hers again. She was for the time being as perfectly, youngly, fearlessly happy as if she had never learned the bitter lesson that joy could die. She couldn't think of anything to say, but words did not seem necessary. She knew she was very beautiful. She had put on beauty like a garment, and the night was beautiful, and the sunken old rotten steps were beautiful, and the dog was beautiful. So the first 160 pages or so is set in June. We're really kind of getting the feel for all of the different characters, the different family members, how they all interact. I wanted to share the descriptions of June and of summer. Her head lay in a warm pool of sunshine that spread itself over the pillow. She lay and stretched herself in it like a lazy little golden cat, sniffing delicately at the whiffs of heliotrope that blew in from the garden below. So lovely. And then once we have that first full summer, then we experience the passing of time. And that time passage is often used not just in character updates, but also in L.M. Montgomery's beautiful depictions of seasons and night and weather. It was a windy, dark gray night, cold for August, with more than a hint of nearing autumn in it. Between the gusts of wind, the air was full of the low, continuous thunder of the sea. Low in the west was a single strip of brilliant primrose against which the spire of a church stood up blackly. Above it was the dark, sullen beauty of the heavy storm clouds. Everywhere, on the hills and along the roads, trees were tossing hag-like in the wind. A group of them overhanging the gate was like a weird cluster of witches, weaving unholy spells. The summer, another summer, was almost over. Asters and goldenrod were blooming along the red roads. Goldfinches were eating the cosmos and sunflower seeds in the gardens. And I just love the metaphors that she sets up and the beauty of the writing in this book. And now on to the critique. So I'm very glad that I read this book. I love anything that I've read by L.M. Montgomery, and certainly there is a spectrum of her books that I love and can relate to and want to go back to and really feel are comfort reads versus some of the other ones that I'm glad I read, that I love, that you can find beautiful writing in, but maybe are not your favorites. And I think A Tangled Web falls into that. My first main critique in this is there are way too many characters, and it's not just peripheral characters where you learn about them, they're in the village, you know that they exist, but they are part of the plot. There are multiple couples and families that we really get into the nitty-gritty of their toxicity and their
issues and their relationships and their grudges that they're holding. And I do think, as we see in The Blue Castle, that Ella Montgomery does a really great job in characterizing dysfunctional families. We can see the dysfunction. You can still love your family. You can still have compassion for them. You accept them for the way that they are, but you recognize the dysfunction. And she saw the dysfunction. This book is full of dysfunctional family elements. We have the Penhallows and the Darks. They all intermarry and intermingle. And at the beginning of this book, Aunt Becky calls the whole family in for a levee. And at that time, she starts to kind of share this is who she's going to leave what items to. She's got one item, a brown jug, that they are all there to find out who is going to get this. This jug has this family culture legacy with it. And Aunt Becky is feared tremendously by her family members. One of the gentlemen has been known to like fight tigers and alligators, and he admits he's afraid of Aunt Becky. So she just wields this iron scepter over this family. She says these biting, cruel things. She doesn't ever let anybody get past what they did in their childhood and in their youthhood. And it is so much bitterness. I think the hardest part of this is, in addition to all those characters that you're trying to keep straight, we don't actually get to the crux and the content of the levee until we're 50 pages in. We have 50 pages of backstory and info dumping before we get to the levee where Aunt Becky is talking to her family. And again, it is page after page of her making biting remarks and then hearing, the thoughts of the person about, what happened, and she can't forgive. And it's just very heavy. I did appreciate that once we got out of that and we got to see the family, I did like most of the love stories. There were definitely stories with family members where I was like, I just need to move on. I'm not invested in them. Whereas some of the characters had the most interesting backgrounds I was interested in. There was a couple who got married, and on their wedding night, she came home and they never talked again. Nobody knows why. They never told anyone in their families why they had left. And they continued to be married because, of course, divorce at that time was unheard of. That was a fascinating story to me, and so I found myself trying to find them. There also were some characters that were very enigmatic and engaging that I also was interested in. Again, I do like this. I like anything L.M. Montgomery writes, so if you have a chance to read this, I would recommend it. Just, I don't think, hold it on as high of a pedestal as you might say The Blue Castle. So let me know, have you read A Tangled Web? Is it something that you're interested in maybe picking up after hearing some of the snippets that I've read? I would love to know. I'm so glad that I was able to bring you along on this picnic experience, and as always, you guys, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.